Okay, hello everyone. I can see a lot of you are still coming into the waiting room. I'm going to get started though, and you will keep coming in the background because we're due a lot of you today. But hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. You just joined She Can Code's live webinar called Strategies for Women to Stay and Succeed in Technology. I am your host for today, Kaylee Bateman, the Managing Director, Community and Partnerships at She Can Code. For those tuning in who aren't familiar with us, She Can Code is a collaborative community working together to tackle the tech gender gap. You can join our free community platform to find a supportive network of like-minded individuals, new opportunities and guidance to help you to excel in your tech career. Now, before I introduce our wonderful speakers for today, please note that there is a live Q&A session running throughout. So please submit your questions in the Q&A box and we will try and get to them at the end. So let's kick off with my fabulous panel for today. I have Stacey Hudson, Digital Talent Lead at JMAN Group, Kate Hawthorn, Director of Consultant Talent at FDM Group, and Natalie Cramp, Partner at JMAN Group. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you all here. We're going to kick off with some introductions about each of you to set the scene for our listeners. So Stacey, can we start with a little bit about you first, please?
Yes, of course. So I work for JMAN Group. We are a clothing and footwear retail business based in Manchester. My role at JMAN is to look after all of our recruitment for our digital technology division. So I've been in the business for over 7 years now, and the business is ever evolving and my role has changed a lot through that time. I've been working with She Can Code for a couple of years now, so very pleased to be here today and thanks so much for the invite.
Incredible. Thank you for joining us. Yes, it's lovely to have you on, especially as a corporate ambassador. It's absolutely lovely to have you on and your support. Kate, yourself, tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Kaylee. Hi, everyone, and thanks for the invitation today. I work for a business called FDM Group. We're a global technology consultancy. And just to describe it really simply, we collaborate with world-leading companies to find the people they need when they need them. And we provide access to future talent. And that's right the way from really early careers through our apprenticeship program, right up to experienced professionals. I've been with the business 11 years. I'm part of the senior leadership team. And I've got responsibility for our apprenticeship program and our alumni program. And alumni are people who've been through our career and who want to come back and rejoin us as experienced professionals. So it's great to be working with people right the way through their careers in tech. It's a great place to start your career, whether you're right at the start or whether you want to restart. So that's me.
Incredible. Yes, it's lovely to have you on. We always love the support of FDM. You've always been very supportive of us and our events, so it's always a pleasure to have you back on our live events as well, Kate. And Natalie, last but not least, Natalie, tell us all about you.
Yeah, really, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here today. So as you said, I'm a partner at JMAN Group, which is a data and AI consultancy. So we spend most of our time working with private equity funds and the businesses that they support on their scale-up journey and how can they use data and AI to make that journey easier, to be able to show people the value that they've added to that business during that time and get successful exits, but really working with those management teams to use data effectively. I am very passionate about where data and people connect, and so that's sort of my day job. And with my spare time, in inverted commas, I also teach leadership teams about how to get value out of data and AI in their businesses. I'm a non-exec director of Generative, which is a data and AI recruitment business, and I'm also the co-chair of Women's Health at Women in Data, which is a network of 80,000 odd women and allies in data, and that's all about how can we use data to try and improve inclusivity in healthcare, which, as many people will know, is not quite the equal footing that we would like it to be on yet, and we think data can be part of the answer. So I love getting involved in things around how we develop talent, and JMAN has a real philosophy about growing our own talent and sort of supporting people to have great careers in a a space that in data and PE is not always something that women necessarily see as a route for them. And so I'm keen to help people see it as a route, because it's a really brilliant career that people can have.
Yes, and for anybody that wants to hear more about Natalie and JMAN Group, Natalie was on our podcast Billing the Tea as well, so make sure you go and check out her episode as well, because that was a really fun one. We've got a lot to cover today, ladies, so we're going to get cracking about key strategies. So, Stacey, can we start with you with what are the key strategies women can use to thrive and advance in the tech industry?
So good question. So I think initially I would say find a community. So we're already here today, which is fantastic. So find a community that you can network within, and trying to really build your professional network. Look at building those connections. Through those connections, you can build your expertise, build your knowledge, and your confidence as well. There's so many things that you can do in person, online. I think as well, I think a lot of people do benefit from mentorship as well. Certainly from kind of like-minded women, to really help further your careers as well. So I think be curious and ask questions, be open to new challenges, and say yes to things that can sometimes be out of your comfort zone. But I certainly feel like surrounding yourself with people who share the same kind of challenges within their career, seeing people who have thrived and you can learn from, because I don't think we can do it all by ourselves. So I think, you know, by attending something like this today, and being part of a community like She Can Code, for example, is a really great way of just opening yourself up to so much more opportunity to further yourself in your career.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, being a part of a community like She Can Code, I was definitely going to agree with you on that one. But even before us, I agree, because some people find it really difficult to go out and network or make the right connections, and sometimes just being in an online community where you introduce yourself and then other people will step in and say they do similar things, or we tend to tag people in our community to try and make introductions, and the same with the mentoring program is kind of a matchmaking service. It's there to help you, because you are right, we can't do it by ourselves, and a lot of people don't always know that these types of things are available, these types of communities are available, that mentoring programs are available. And I love the fact that you just said, just stay curious to find other things in other networks, because that's something that we try and advocate for as well, just including other people's networks within our network as well. So we encourage people to share lots of different things that are happening, lots of different events, and lots of different people that you can meet, because it does encourage people to want to stay in tech and to see the other things that are happening. And if you are you might be getting a little bogged down in your own company, for instance, and you're sort of thinking, oh, maybe this isn't for me, or is this what tech is like? I thought it was going to be something else. And actually, to see other people doing other things, you might think maybe it's just time for me to make a leap somewhere else and try something
Yeah.
new.
And I think, from a mentoring perspective, a mentor doesn't have to be someone who's in the field that you are in. It can be someone who's doing something completely different. I think it's getting that different perspective, and that really helps. Like just having sometimes a conversation with someone. Everyone looks at things in a different way sometimes, and I think getting that different perspective is really helpful. And also, and I was speaking about this the other day, actually, quite often, I mean, I don't want to be, I don't want to say everybody's probably had this experience, but generally, if you ask someone for help or their thoughts on something, not many people go, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to have this conversation with you. So I do appreciate as well. It can be a little bit daunting, maybe reaching out to someone who you've never spoken to before, or you're at an event in person and to go and walk over to people you've never met before, it can be really daunting. So just take little steps. And to your point, you know, if you can join an online community, maybe that's where you feel comfortable initially, and build from there. Speak to your co-workers, speak to your friends. People know people, you know, and I think that's the power of networking. You never know at what point in your career you're going to, I know someone who might be able to help you with that, or, you know, and pay it on, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. Natalie, I can see you laughing when Stacey said about usually you ask people and they're going to help. But I take it you've never had someone turn around saying no.
People love to be useful. And I think
Yeah.
particularly when you're starting out in your career, it's so daunting to ask someone for help. But what you don't realise at that point is that actually people love to be asked because it makes them feel special.
It'll make them feel good, right?
Yeah. So actually it's a really good thing. And I always say the same to people, ask for help, because it's okay. The odd person might turn around and say no, but normally they would only say, oh, sorry, I don't have the time right now. They wouldn't not want to help, or they might not be the right person, but they can connect you to someone. So I do think, like, the more you ask for help and the more you're open about what you don't know and what you want to learn, the more people can help you. And that goes from, like, even with your line manager, being really explicit about, these are the things I really want to get out of this year of my career, through to asking other people in the business and things for help. And I think what you said about the mentor doesn't have to be someone who does a similar job to you is really important in tech, because so many of the people I see struggle as they climb the career ladder in tech and data is because they struggle to make the sort of shift from I'm a technical leader to I'm now sort of in a leadership position where I've got to do all these other things like influence people and sometimes sell and things that aren't natural to me because I've grown up coding. So actually having that sort of business mentor who perhaps has a slightly different role from you can be a really helpful way to see, well, how does this land? What do you think as someone who doesn't have the same technical skills as me? So it can be a really useful pairing. And I think the other thing I would say is, like, it can be a virtue. So value the diversity you bring, because whilst it can feel a bit intimidating to be the minority, actually we know that we get better things from more diverse workforces. So given there are less women in coding, for example, there are less women in data, there's less women in tech, actually you're going to help that team think differently, and that's a real asset. So don't be put off by that, and sometimes really value that you have a voice that other people perhaps don't have, and that can be really valuable as you build your career in an industry where there are less of you than there are of other people, because you're a scarce commodity.
Yes, definitely. I love that. Definitely. People forget that they bring something different, and they might be sitting there thinking, oh, I don't really want to share that, but actually that's why you were hired, and that is usually what your line manager is looking for you to do, to share a different perspective on something. And definitely, and I do completely agree as well that you don't always have to find a mentor that is in your area of expertise. You can learn different things from different mentors. In our mentoring program, the mentors tend to have quite a few connections as well, and we try to take the awkwardness out of it. So some of those connections don't work out, you can just fire off an email and part ways in a nice way and say maybe this wasn't for us. But it also takes a little practice to find a good mentor as well, and somebody that you're going to connect with for quite a while as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean you find one and you're with them for life, and that is it. But you definitely take different things from different mentors. Kate, we touched upon this a little bit already about I suppose mentorship, and I suppose even sponsorship can help with this. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about how can women effectively advocate for themselves in promotions, salary negotiations, and leadership opportunities? Because it's a tough one. You know, you find your mentor and they build you up, and then you think, oh, I still can't advocate for myself. So do you have any strategies for that, of any advice that could help our listeners?
Yeah, of course. And you know, when you read the headlines in the gender pay gap, and for anyone who's not aware, the gender pay gap is basically every company over 250 employees, they have to report on the difference being paid in salary in relation to men and women. And you really see that there is still such a gap between what men and women are paid. I checked it out yesterday, and it's 13.1% less an hour for women than men. So there's clearly quite a lot of work to be done here. And I was thinking about why, apart from some of the obvious societal reasons, but why is it that women often will say, I don't like to speak up about this? And I think some of it is just because self-promotion. We're taught as young girls that it's bragging and it's not how we're raised naturally to be. And we've really got to change that, because if you work in a company where pay rises aren't standardized and they're not regularly timetabled, if you don't speak up and you're not in a culture where that is going to come to you, then it's not really any surprise that we're still in this situation. I think there's a few golden rules. I would say, first of all, just know your worth. Know what you bring to the business and reflect on the impact. Often when you're having to negotiate, you'll end up at some point having to talk to a finance director, and they will want to understand impact. And so you've got to really understand the role that you're in and what difference it's made. So I think never go into that kind of conversation without having really done some really good thinking about that and reflecting outside of, I'm great at my job. You need to bring perhaps a bit more to that conversation. So I think you've got to go into a conversation kind of armed and ready. But I guess at the same time, you've got to be mindful of bigger issues that are going on in your business. So, what's going on in terms of overall business performance, market conditions. If you don't get that right, the timing of it can really backfire on you. So again, I think that's the second one. Really think about what's going on in the business and how you're impacting on it. And I think also thinking about other things that you might want to ask for if the time isn't right to ask for something very significant. There are lots of other things that could actually make quite a big difference and signal your intent. The time might not be right to get that really big salary increase, but it doesn't mean you can't signal that you're ambitious and that there's an intent there. And that could be all kinds of things, professional development opportunities, a bit of flexibility, health insurance. But I think things like professional development really kind of says to the business, look, I am ambitious. I do want to grow. The time might not be right now for that big salary increase, but I want you to know that I'm there. I'm one of those people that wants to do that. So I think do go into those conversations really having thought it through and reflecting on your impact and what you bring to a business. Not always easy, but I think you have to do it at some point.
Yeah, you're so right. You do have to do it at some point, whether or not you feel like too many things have been coming your way, and now you're at a point where you deserve that promotion. You are right, though, it does still come down to timing. But I've also found as well, I know a few of our community members have told me that sometimes it's the realization that your manager isn't a mind reader, and they don't know. They might be sitting there thinking, well, you probably want a pay rise, but they don't know things like, do you want to go into management? Do I put you forward for certain promotions? And they don't know those things as well. And I think once that dawns on you throughout your career, and you think, actually, I'm gonna have to find a way to vocalize what I'm feeling, even if it's things that you don't want to do as well. I had a lady tell me that the other day. She said, I wanted to just make sure that my manager knew, don't consider me for management. She said, I don't want to do it. I just want to stay where I am and become a specialist in what I'm doing, but I don't want to manage people. And she said, I had to make it clear. So either way, you have to make it clear. But you are right, it's a difficult one with salary, because you have to go in and show your worth, which a lot of us do really struggle to put together a case. Stacey, I can see you nodding along. It's a really difficult, it's a very taboo topic, salary. We're not meant to talk about it. We're not meant to talk about our own salary increases.
Yeah.
And we're not meant to talk about them with other people.
No. I think what I would also add, and everything Kate's just said is absolutely right. I think I would also add, ask for feedback. So ask for feedback from your peers, from your stakeholders, from whoever you're working with, and really try and understand what value not only you think you bring, but what do others also think. And yeah, relating it back from a commercial perspective is really important. And any one of us can look on a job board and see a role advertised at 10,000, £20,000 more than what we're already earning. But actually what we have to think about is, what's the business I'm in? What's the sector I'm in? Where do I sit? You know, looking at from an experience perspective, and yeah, to what Kate said, impact. And that's where we think about, what have we done to make an impact? Use data, use that feedback, and all of those things make for a really strong argument. Timing is everything. And I think that's why advocating for yourself, but also leaning on your peers as well for that feedback is really important. And also, you know, it's good to know what we're doing well, what we can improve on, and being more self-aware. And you need people around you to do that.
Yes, definitely. And I completely agree with the looking at the business and the timing, because you're right, you can see other jobs and then you think, oh, you know, maybe I'm underpaid. And then actually when you look at your own business, Kate, I completely agree with that, because it could really tank if you went in and, you know, half of the team had just been made redundant and you're just going in there asking for a pay rise. It is not going to go down well. But yeah, timing is everything, and how you approach that conversation with your boss as well. And how they take it. Natalie, I wanted to ask you a little bit about boundaries. Something else is another taboo in the workplace. How can women set boundaries effectively while still advancing in their careers?
Yeah, I'm not sure why I got this question, because I'm not sure I'd say I'm the best at it. But
how do you set boundaries?
But I suppose you also learn over time, right? So look, the first thing I would say is, it is a balance, as with most things in life. If you're too boundaried, you're going to miss out on opportunities. So going about, if you're really trying to build your career, and there are different stages of your career, right? Sometimes you might need more boundaries because of other things that are going on in your life, and the priority has to be those things. And so that is your focus, and that's fine. But if the focus is, I'm trying to drive my career, then yes, you need to put some boundaries in place to make sure it's sensible. But also don't be so rigid and so structured that you miss out on opportunities, because I would really encourage people to take the opportunities that are there. Having said that, communication, a bit like the question before, is really, really important. So in the same way as a manager, you said you were not a mind reader. And so, you know, lay out how you want to earn your promotion and tell me what's important to you. It's a bit the same with boundaries. Like, have an open conversation with whoever you're working with. What are the things, lay out the things that are really important to you, and understand what's really important to them, so you understand how you can best work together and what those boundaries are, because people can't guess. And what I might think would be really helpful of me might actually be the worst thing for you in the world. So, you know, like, for example, like, people will save up emails to send on a Monday morning so that they're not disturbing you over the weekend, which can relieve stress. That's great. But if you're somebody who's in meetings all day on a Monday, actually, I might prefer to have those emails on a Sunday night, because it's less stressful for me than having them sitting in my inbox. So if you don't have a conversation, you're not going to know. And my answer will be different probably from Kate's answer, probably from Stacey's answer. So just don't make them up, and make sure that you're sort of having that really clear communication with anybody you're working with. And then when you do set them, I would say you really need to stick to them, because how you let people treat you and operate with you is how they will, right? So there's no point in you always responding to emails, for example, on a Saturday, and then stomping around the house being really outraged that your business keeps sending you emails on a Saturday, because what you're showing them is, if you email me on a Saturday, I will reply, and they think you don't mind. So it's really, really important that you sort of train people in your boundaries by the way that you show up and the way that you behave. And again, that's not being so rigid that if there's an absolute, you know, COVID hits and there's a massive crisis going on in your business, oh, well, no, I'm not going to respond after 6 p.m. Obviously, you have to show some flexibility. But generally, I had in a situation when I was younger where I went on secondment, and I went on secondment from Deloitte to the London 2012 Olympics, which was an amazing experience. But I had like a London 2012 email address. I was there to do that job in the day. And people would, you sort of had to keep your hand in because it was in consulting to sort of help out with other things in the business. But there was this one manager who just kept messaging me, like being like, "Oh, Natalie, can you turn these slides around for a pitch in the next 2 hours?" and stuff like that. And what I realized was if I responded to him, and I had an out of office on that said, you know, I'm seconded, I'll get back to you as soon as I can, but there will be a delay and it'll probably be this evening. And so I'd see his emails and I would wait till like the evening, and then I would reply being like, "Oh, hello, as you know, I'm on secondment. Would you like me to still help with this? Because I'm happy to pick up something tonight, but I won't be able to do things during the day." And I only had to do it like 3 times and it stopped happening because he realized he couldn't get that quick response. But had I responded, because I was eager to please, I'm a consultant, right? I'm a people pleaser, like then it would never have changed. And so I do think when you set out those boundaries, you then have to really live them, because you can't expect anyone else to hold to them. You're the only person who's going to do that. And I think the other thing that's really important, because we talked a lot about talent and promotions and things like that, is leverage other people. Like the only way that you can create space for you to do different things and have those boundaries is if you leverage the talent. So always asking yourself, why does it need to be me? Is there an opportunity to bring somebody else into this? Is there an opportunity to develop somebody else's career and opportunities? Because the less that the business is completely dependent on you for certain answers, the more flexibility you're going to have with boundaries. So if you try and make yourself a single point of failure, you are going to have you'll have situations where only you can do it and it's really frustrating. Whereas if you take an approach of, I'm going to elevate other people, I'm going to bring people in, I'm going to make sure they understand my thinking, then you have much more flexibility in how you then deploy people to help solve problems where maybe you're not as available, or maybe you've got a crunch in the things that you're doing. So I do think that you have to take responsibility for it, and you have to communicate well, and then you sort of have to stick to it, and then leverage the other talent around you to try and make it work.
Yes, I think because it's quite a challenge as well as you move through leadership doing that, because you have to relinquish the control sometimes, and you have to delegate and hand things over, which isn't always easy, because then you're thinking, well, you know, people are not relying on me as much as they should. But you're right, because then when you do need to do something else, or you're being pulled off somewhere else, or you even want to take a break, then it becomes very, very difficult. I found that with ladies as well that work part-time, and that they need to stick to their days, because communicating that, just having your boundaries anyway, is one thing, but also it's much easier for the rest of your team to know when they can get you and when they can't get you, instead of thinking, is she online, is she not online? Like, then everything gets a little bit awkward. So actually it works both ways as well. It's better for your team to know that you're not around those days, so we're not going to approach you, we're not going to expect anything back on those days, because you don't work on those days.
One of my team is love them dearly, but awful at that. So we'll get annoyed that he's working on holiday or paternity leave or whatever. But you're like, but you're engaging. We're not engaging you. You're choosing to engage us. And you've had a Teams message or an email which could have absolutely waited, or someone else could have picked up if it's been forwarded because you've got your out of office on, but you've chosen to engage in it. And you've not engaged in it in a, so and so, please can you cover this for me because I'm out. You've engaged in it and you've started to try and solve the answer, and you want to know what's happened to it as opposed to hand it over. And I do think actually one of the worst things about it, as you say, is it's really confusing for the team, because it says, I don't trust you. I don't trust you to proxy for me. I've told you to proxy. And I had it with somebody, a manager once, who went on leave, and then they were diving in from their holiday. And I was just like, am I covering this or not? Because I'm perfectly happy to do it. But then we're going to end up giving different answers because we're not the same people. And it's now just confusing for everybody. I don't know whether I'm meant to be answering or not. Whereas if I knew you were out, I would deal with it. And I think that's the other thing as a manager, when you do delegate like that, you have to just accept other people won't do it the same way as you, but as long as it got done, doesn't necessarily matter. And so you can't come back and go, oh no, that isn't how I wanted it, or it should be done like this, or it should. You have to say thank you for covering that, and just accept it's been done their way. Unless there's some big drama that you need to talk to them about why it would be different. So there's a role on both sides, as you say, about sticking to it. And, you know, you are the only, equally, don't go on holiday without having given a handover, and don't expect to get interrupted, because that's your own fault. You've not set it up for you to be able to have that boundary. So if you want boundaries, I work 4 days a week at the moment at JMAN to do the other stuff. Like, if you want boundaries, you're the one who has to, it's not really anyone else's responsibility to make that work. It is yours.
Yes, definitely. And I think people think that sometimes setting those boundaries will hold you back, and that you won't progress in certain areas, which can be a misconception. People just sometimes think they have to go above and beyond, when actually your team are thinking, could you just go on holiday? That would be great, and have a great time. We'll see you in a week.
Because then you showed me that as a team member, it's okay to go on holiday. It's one of the best things a senior manager ever did for me when I was junior. She went on holiday and she said, for 3 weeks, I'm not contactable. And we had all been in a very intense project. And I was like, oh, and it did run without her. So if it can run without her, it can certainly run without me. And it really set the sort of claim for everybody. So it's really important that we signal the right things by what we do, as well as by what we say.
Yes, definitely, because it creates that culture as well of thinking it's okay to shut down and go on holiday and have a great time. Stacey, what about career roadblocks? On that note, have you faced any career roadblocks, and how did you overcome them? We get asked this a lot about women in tech, and when people say, so what is it actually that women in tech see? What are those roadblocks? But have you experienced anything yourself?
I think there's a couple of things. So personally, I remember when I was really young, I was really dead set on having a career. Didn't know what it was going to be, but I wanted a career because that's what I had to do. I had to be really successful, but I wasn't quite ever sure what I wanted to do. And I had, like, when I finished and graduated, I was working in one job, and then I left, did a bit of traveling, fell into working in recruitment. Actually, I went and met a recruiter about getting registered at their agency to help me get a job. And they were asking me, like, what do you want to do? I was like, I just really like being around people, like talking to people, like solving problems. But I never had that, like, I want to be this, I want to be that. And that kind of indecisiveness and not quite sure. I think it was just I didn't really know much about the world of work, if I'm really honest, because I just wasn't. My mum was a hairdresser, my dad worked for a dairy farm, so it was I didn't have that kind of, I don't know, the people around me to go, this is what someone in HR does, or this is what someone in finance does. So I think for me, it took a while to actually get really comfortable in not knowing what I wanted to do, and actually turning it around into asking lots of questions and saying yes to certain things. So, like, I worked in recruitment for a couple of years and I loved it. I loved who I worked with. I loved what I was doing. And then when I started working at M Brown, I kind of thought, actually, there's so much I can do actually within my role to broaden it and to broaden my knowledge and broaden my experience. So I think when it comes to like a roadblock, as you say, I would say it was probably myself and putting too much pressure on myself to have something and not showing what that something was, but actually taking the time, which does come with experience. It comes with having different conversations, meeting different people, and getting to know the world of work and what the art of the possible looks like, to actually make me sit back now and realize, look at how much I have learned. And okay, I specialize in recruitment, but I've done a CIPD qualification. So I tried to get a better understanding of the more generalist kind of HR. But then I use that in my day to day, and it helps with everything from doing your day-to-day job to stakeholder management to working with part of a team to working part of a business, to understand from a commercial perspective and being able to dial things up and slow things down, and maybe just always learning along the way, isn't it? So sometimes it's about honing your skills, and then the career just comes, doesn't it? Before you know it, you've been working in something for a while, and you're like, this is what I do now, and this is what I am doing, and it's so I think certainly from my perspective, that's taken years to really kind of be comfortable with with that, you know, my sister she loved animals. She always wanted to be a veterinary nurse, and that's what she did. She went and studied and did everything she needed to be that. And I always really envied her, because I was thinking, I don't know what qualifications I should be doing. And I went to uni and did like a business and English degree because I love to read, but I also really like the idea of working in business. Now I ended up working in recruitment. So I think everybody's paths change. We as people change. What we're interested in changes over time. So I think maybe not necessarily, if you're like me and you're not quite sure what you want to do, maybe not necessarily having something really specific in your mind, but being able to actually be in the moment and enjoy what you're doing and learn and become good at that could also work.
Yeah, and being at a company that allows you to do that as well. When you say really enjoy it and to be able to try new things, people at JMAN Group, they stay a really long time for a reason, because they're allowed to try new things and actually enjoy their job and move around. So I think, yeah, you are totally right. A lot of that comes with having been in work a little while, figuring out what you're good at, the things that you don't like we were saying earlier. I was speaking to that lady who said, I had to just tell my manager, do not consider me for management, because I don't want to look after people. Yeah. It takes a few years sometimes to figure out what it is that you want to do. Kate, one of those things I wanted to ask about was common challenges. Stacey kind of mentioned it a little bit there about sometimes you don't always see the people that are in those roles, that you're thinking that is something I could do. Like Stacey was thinking, you know, I'm not quite sure. And if you don't always see the people in those roles either, you're not always quite sure what's even available to you in tech. So I wanted to ask you about what are some of those common challenges that women face in tech, and how can they overcome them? I suppose one of them is not being able to see enough role models as well.
Yeah, and it's easy to get a bit overwhelmed, isn't it, by the statistics that are out there, because they've not changed significantly enough. Things are getting much better, I hasten to add. I mean, we work with companies, and everybody wants to do better in terms of promoting females in business, and it is getting better, but it's still quite easy to get quite daunted by the stats, because they don't paint the kind of picture that we all want to see. And I'm sure Natalie and Stacey and of course She Can Code, that's what we're all in the business of trying to change. But it still remains that, you know, women are underrepresented, and because they have been for quite a long time, the higher up the chain you go, the harder it is to find those role models. Equally, I think that period, because women are having children later now, it often coincides with that really critical progression time in your career. And so many are leaving the sector or stagnating. And, you know, you read some awful things about what's been described as motherhood penalty for, you know, every child you have, it reduces your earnings. And so it is really easy to get really caught up in the number of women that are dropping out of the sector, and we're just not seeing those role models. But I think at the same time, there are, like I said, the businesses that we work with, they really do want to do better in this space. And I think we all have a role to play. I mean, it gets a bit tiresome sometimes having to speak for all women, but you know, we all do need to get behind all the initiatives that are there. We do need to, you know, just give them the visibility that we all need them to have, so that we can change things. And I guess it comes back to what Natalie was saying about leveraging others and finding, and Stacey, finding that network, find those people, because they are there, they really are there. And, you know, there is so much out there to help you actually navigate your career now. And careers are just not linear in the way they used to be, which, again, easy to kind of get caught up in the uncertainty of it, but switch your mindset and that's an opportunity. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting stuff being written at the moment about AI and the opportunity that it may actually have for women, whilst there's, you know, there's some scary stats around the prediction that more women's jobs will be affected in tech than men's because of the roles, sadly, that are still there. But also it's going to create some incredible new roles, particularly around the kind of human touch points and the ethics. And, you know, these are roles where the actual technical ability is less important, because that can be taught along the way. It's the ethics and the creativity and asking the right questions and all of that. And actually you have to believe that that's going to open up some, or it gives us the opportunity, if we get this right as an industry, to open up more opportunities for women. So I think there is a lot of uncertainty. There is and there is still a lack of role models, but it is changing, and there are some fantastic opportunities, I think, in the next, who knows what the next 5 years are going to bring. None of us do.
That's the exciting thing in tech, though,
yeah,
that those roles are constantly changing, and even though you might be coming up against challenges, there are definitely new things that are happening, the new areas that you can move into. And you're right, it's finding that network of people that are doing that for you to think, actually, I didn't know I could take that step, or I could go in that direction, until you hear about someone else that has done it, or you see it in a community, for instance.
And I think the network of people is also important to say. It's not just women, right? Men will have a lot. We're really lucky. We've got 2 founders who are so committed to supporting women and their progression in the workplace. And we were having a conversation not long before I came on this call about how in our industry, some of the team find that as the woman who gets on a call with clients, sometimes the default, no matter what the seniority is, right, the default is that they speak directly to the men on the call because they just assume that they're more senior. But what happened, like, we told some of the men in our team this, and they were like, my goodness, I didn't realize that, but I can be useful on that call. Now I know to make sure that that doesn't happen, and I set you up. So also don't feel like it always has to be you necessarily. And how do you draw on that network, and how do you make that network aware of some of the challenges that you're facing so that they can be useful, but sometimes also do it in a more easily than you would be able to do it in bringing it up. And I think somebody's put a question on the chat about, you know, how do I speak up as somebody who's in a minority? And I think that's one of the other things that you can do is talk to some of those other people who are going to be in that meeting and say, you know, I've got this idea, I want to speak up. Like, you know, will you support me to do that, or can I have 10 minutes on the agenda to do this? So don't feel like if it makes you nervous, it always has to be in the moment, and use others. And it's not just like women's networks are brilliant, but it's not just the women's networks. You know, men will support you too. It's just they might not have realized sometimes, because it hasn't happened to them, what you're facing. So you just need to make them aware, and then they're normally keen to do something about it.
Yes, yeah, because I wanted to ask you about how women can build a strong professional network. But you're absolutely right, because that isn't always a community. It is inside your company as well. And some of the best support I have had has been through male sponsors saying the right things at the right time, usually if I'm not in the room, putting me forward for something. But you're right, even having that professional network that will speak up for you. I did have a guy tell me his wife works in tech, and she was very senior in a tech company, and he said every time she was in a meeting, the other guys in the room would always tell her to take the minutes. And then somebody spoke up one day and said, you know what, have you not noticed that we all keep asking the same lady in the room to take the minutes, even though everybody was on the board? But nobody was doing it on purpose. It was just something that was happening that they just thought, you know, they just assumed that lady was going to be taking the minutes, even though she was the same level as everybody. So just that person speaking up and saying, has anybody else noticed that? Where everybody went, yes, we should share the responsibility, instead of just having her do it every time. But you are right, building a professional network is not just about communities, online communities. Even networking in-person events that fill people with dread. It's also doing it internally as well, and finding your network within your company as well. I can see a few questions in here. I'm going to quickly scoot through a few before we end today. But I can see someone who says, thanks so much for this webinar. They said they've been in product management for almost a decade, but mostly in non-tech industries. I want to move into a more technical role, but I'm unsure where to start or how to pitch myself. Any advice on repositioning myself? Anybody got any advice for that person who wants to come in and they've been in mostly non-tech industries?
So I would encourage, well, one, the tech industry is moving really quickly, right? So there's lots of new developments. So I definitely would expect you to be showing an interest in that. So how are you, if I'm interviewing you, how are you showing me that you have an interest in that and you have a passion for that? Because actually, given two people who are sort of even in an interview process, if you've gone above and beyond your role to do that stuff, not just done it in your role, I'm probably going to take the chance on you because it shows me that you're prepared to go to extra lengths to do it, whereas potentially other people are just doing it because of their job. I think the other thing is where one of the things I've always found super helpful is where are there opportunities to volunteer, and that might be a project within your current business. So, you know, is there some system implementation going on that you can help out with or something, or it might be through a charity or a community like this. But all through my career I've done different volunteering things, and I really do believe volunteering is a really great route to work because you get to experience skills, test things out, and almost at every interview I've then been able to talk about things that I haven't necessarily got from my day job, but I've maybe got from being a school governor or a trustee or teaching kids something or whatever it is, or more recently like the women in data stuff. And that has helped give me a broader portfolio to be able to speak to and to be able to demonstrate that I have got those skills. So I would definitely think about that. And then I suppose the other thing I would think about is where are the opportunities where almost you can use the skills you've got, but in a business that there are opportunities to sort of move naturally into that space. So they're hiring you for what you can do right now, but you can literally see the next job that you want in that business, because it's much easier often to move internally where you've established brand than it is to sometimes make the leap externally where you're asking people to take a chance on you overall. So I would probably think about that. Hopefully a few of those things might be useful.
Yes, definitely. And Stacey, as a recruiter, do you agree with that? It's sometimes easier to try things internally instead of, like Natalie said, a company who you haven't worked for before might be thinking, I'm taking a big chance on you if you haven't got that technical expertise yet. Do you see that a lot as a recruiter, people wanting to move around?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about what your role is and think about what other things you could get involved in your business, but then relate that back to your objectives and use those opportunities. I think getting a lot of buy-in from your current line manager is really important, and being really kind of clear and concise with, you know, this is what I'm thinking. And we would literally having this conversation like over the last few weeks with someone, but try and when we talked about the mentorship, I might not be go and find a mentor per se, but go and speak to someone in that area in your business. You've already got you already step in the right direction by being in that business. So connect with someone in that team where you might be interested in and understand what things you could do. So there's so many free things online, free tools, free training courses. And depending on what type of environment and business you're working in, you will often find there's an opportunity for you to get involved in something. So yeah, I would, but it all starts again with asking questions, communication, leveraging your network as well. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. Again, it's leveraging that network. Finding your network in the first place is a really good place to start.
Yeah.
I can see a question in here that I wanted to ask Kate about, because FDM have a really good return to work program. And there is somebody in here that is saying, I took a break from my tech career to raise my children and I'm finding it hard to get back in. Job spec and interviews have changed so much. how can I rebuild my confidence? Because I can see someone down here who mentioned your motherhood penalty, and they said women are dropping out a lot during their perimenopause phase as well. And this is a conversation that is still not happening in organisations, and they're losing people who are experienced and valuable, which I completely agree. But in terms of returning to work after motherhood, how can people rebuild their confidence? And FDM have a great program they put you through to help you ramp back on, don't they?
Thanks, Kaylee. Yeah, it's a really important part of our career programs, because you've just described what happens. Skill depreciation happens, particularly in tech. And that's why we made the decision to build a program around a whole group of people who were experiencing this. And it's not just females, you know, people take time out of their careers for lots of reasons, but the biggest group of people that come through our returners program are females that have been raising a family, and they've found that the confidence has really been knocked. And so the returners program is about giving people that reskill, upskill, confidence reset, and just opportunity awareness and reintroduction back into industry. And it's been a really, really successful part of what we offer, because our clients, people find that the people we bring through are really bringing an awful lot back into industry. And it doesn't take an awful lot, actually, to just have that reset. But sometimes that's what people need. And as I said, confidence can be quite a big factor in that, as well as all the more technical upskilling that people can find they need when they've had to take some time out. So that's one of our programs. But again, we're looking actually because you're right, Kaylee, it's not just that group. There's people going through lots of different times in their lives where actually another version of that program could be really, really useful. As we said, people stepping out, delaying having children, people at the later part in their career. There's lots of groups that could really benefit. So there's no one size fits all in this space, but a focus on returners, because let's not lose the fantastic skill sets that people have got. It's why we've got a digital skills gap. Let's bring people back in and give them that confidence to embark on the next phase in their career. We've all got very long careers ahead of us. So
exactly. I think people worry as well that they've had that gap and they've lost that technical skills knowledge, not just that, but their confidence as well. So programs like that really do help on both sides as well. I'm going to quickly throw in one last question from Connie Foster, because she's the She Can Code advocate. Hello, Connie. It's always a pleasure to see you. She said, I've been in tech for a few years now, and I'm starting to feel like I'm stuck in the same role without any growth or opportunities. Do you have any advice to keep developing and moving forward? Any advice for someone who's feeling a little stuck?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's some of the same things we've probably spoken to, right? So I suppose first is looking within your business of are there any opportunities that you can see? Is it that you don't know how to get to them, or is it that you just feel like there's actually you're at a ceiling in your own business right now? If it's you don't know how to get to them, then that comes to asking for help, laying out quite clearly with your line manager or somebody in the business that you can talk to, or maybe the person who heads that department, going and having a conversation with them, asking them for coffee and saying, look, this is really where I want to get to. What would I need to do to be interesting to you? Like, are there courses I can go on? Are there experiences I can get? So I think that would probably be my first point. If you end up then in a situation where you're like, actually, no, I have just capped out here, because sometimes that happens, right? There is just no role above us, or we're waiting for someone to die or retire to sort of be able to progress. And then I think it's about thinking about what are the opportunities you want, and then it goes back to the networks and really using that, because so many I remember when I was moving, my last move of jobs, like I spoke to some recruiters and they were like, this is really lovely to chat to you, Natalie. I'd love to place you and get the fee for you, but you're going to get your job from your network. And they were right. And fundamentally, that's sort of how so much of it happens. But even just putting out there that you're open and you're interested, and going to some of these things, hearing what the different opportunities are, talking to other people about their jobs, whether that's your mates or whether that's sort of at these events. The networks that I have personally found most useful are the ones, a bit like the She Can Code thing, that you can keep coming back to. So there's a like regular rhythm of engagement, and you basically can build connections with a community. I think that tends to be better for you. I haven't personally found going to odd random events, unless it's for education about something that's happening in the market, very useful from a networking perspective, because it's very hit and miss. Then you're never going to see the person again unless you make a load of effort. So I would also be quite tactical, because your time is precious, about what are the things I'm going to, where do I want to get to, where do people like that go, and then how do I sort of find some communities that can support. And then I think in terms of developing, like there are loads of online free things. So, you know, lots of free stuff. I mean, you can teach yourself an awful lot with ChatGPT these days. It's probably the best platform for teaching you how to code. There's also, you know, things that you can buy an online subscription to, whether that's you want leadership development from someone like Masterclass, or whether that's you want Python coding from someone like Data Camp. You know, it depends what you're looking to learn. But, you know, just creating a slot. You can never create big slots in your diary. People always get lost in that, but you can create like 30 minutes every morning. So create yourself a regular slot, and so that you feel that you're doing something, and then that will hopefully also build your confidence as you're out networking. And then I would also like find the good recruiters and talk to them, because they will help you. They know how to get out of you what you're really looking for and what would be good for you, and they will ask you the right questions to do that. So I would use them, because they will come up with, did you realize that businesses like this offer these sorts of roles that you might not even know? So I think that they're useful people to talk to as well, to sort of help you think about, okay, so then what does my move forward look like? Because I think it's hard to move forward if you can't see what the next steps are, because you don't almost know what you're developing towards. So I would encourage you to sort of help yourself work that bit out, and then it will become much, much clearer the steps that you could take.
Yes, definitely, I agree. And that doesn't always have to be forward either. It can be sideways as well, which some people don't always think about, but actually can be a really good move for people. We're already out of time. I can see though, Lou, thank you so much for chatting with us today. She has said if she wished she could use emojis because she wanted to clap hearing Kate's words. So thank you for sharing that, Kate. Ladies, we're already out of time. It's absolutely flown by. So Kate, Stacey, Natalie, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with our community today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you all on here.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Thank you all for everybody joining us. Thank you so much. This was a recorded session, so we will include it in our community and on our website again tomorrow. If you would like to watch it back, please do. But please head over to shecancode.io, register for our free community if you haven't already. And we would love to see you in there. Please join the membership, the mentoringship program, and use some of our lovely free resources, and check out some of our incredible partners as well. But to everybody listening, thank you always for joining us, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Thank you, everyone. Bye.